and are prepared to succeed in college and careers. Clearly, there are many issues and challenges associated with bringing together two districts with deficits that also have high schools on the persistently lowest achieving list. Yet I believe your efforts represent pioneering work that could serve as a model for other schools throughout the state that are confronted with similar challenges. Inasmuch as Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state, I would favorably receive an adopted resolution from your two boards of education requesting to proceed with consolidation proceedings per state law MCL 380-852. And if voters in both districts choose to consolidate, the Michigan Department of Education and I will commit to assisting the new district and its leaders in moving forward to improve both its academic and fiscal situations. For example, I have the authority to extend the timeline related to deficit elimination plans and would be willing to consider doing so in support of your consolidation efforts. I wish you well in the joint board meeting on April the 16th and look forward to working with you in this exciting and important endeavor. Respectfully, Mike Flanagan, Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Our purpose tonight is to take the conversation to the next level and engage our community in this important conversation. This evening, both boards will hear discussion about the establishment of intent to move toward unification. To begin that conversation, we have before us one resolution to consider.
Resolution 41612, establishment of intent to move toward unification. Whereas both the Willow Run and the Ypsilanti Boards of Education are committed to pursuing all viable options to maximize learning opportunities for each and every one of our students. And whereas on August 24th, 2011, the Boards of Education officially formed a joint collaboration and communication task force to explore and recommend additional opportunities for collaboration and sharing between the two districts. And whereas said task force has been meeting monthly during the 2011-2012 school year and reporting on its progress quarterly to both Boards of Education and Representative David Rutledge. And whereas the Willow Run and Ypsilanti Boards of Education have taken action on previous task force recommendations made per the communication and collaboration process and have merged their Air Force Junior ROTC programs and are in the process of merging their transportation facilities and the oversight of their special education services. And whereas this is a continuation of work that our districts have been doing for years, as evidenced by the number and types of shared services in which our districts currently participate. And whereas on March 19, 2012, the task force recommended that the question of school district consolidation be placed on an upcoming ballot and that this recommendation be discussed at a public joint board meeting on April the 16th, 2012. And
whereas the Boards of Education recognize there are many issues and challenges associated with bringing together two deficit districts that also have high schools on the persistently low achievement list, and whereas the two communities are facing declining enrollments, shifting demographics, a tenuous political environment, and a challenging economy, and whereas the decision to unify the two districts rests solely with our school electors, and whereas both districts are committed to raising student achievement and to developing an educational system that values and is committed to ensuring the success of every student, and believe that unifying the two districts has the potential to achieve that end if provided with appropriate support from community partners and the Michigan Department of Education. Now therefore be resolved that the question of bringing the school districts of Willow Run and Ypsilanti together to form a new unified education system be placed on a ballot to be considered by the electors of each district at such time as recommended by the task force and supported by an appropriate resolution properly passed by each board, and only after there has been established a clear and detailed plan for the development and implementation of a unified education system that has adequately supported specific legislative and financial incentives so as to reasonably ensure the achievement of rigorous academic standards for all students and the financial viability of the new district.
I I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 41612, establishment of intent to move toward unification. It's been properly moved by Trustee Horn. Is there support for that resolution?
Support.
Been properly supported by Trustee Devaney. That Resolution 41612 be approved as presented.
I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution 41612, establishment of intent to move toward unification. Can I get a motion?
Discussion, is there any discussion?
We'll have discussion at the conclusion of the putting on the table.
So moved.
It has been moved by Dorothy Stewart, and can I get second?
Second.
And has been seconded by Mark Wilder that resolution 41612 be approved as presented. Discussion.
And now we'll move to discussion. Is there any discussion from trustees? Trustee Phantom?
Thank you, President Bates. I'm not sure, the only clause that I think speaks, and I'm not sure it speaks adequately to some of my concerns, are in the enabling legislation, and it begins, and only after there has been established a clear and detailed plan for the development and implementation of the unified educational system. It seems to me that's linked to something that's going on in Lansing, and I'm not sure it speaks to the specific areas that our families and members of our community would be concerned with. And if I'm reading this incorrectly, please clarify it. It seems to me that these are some of the questions that members of the community have every right to know, and I take it we're going to be discussing later on in tonight's meeting that we're going to get community input. Question number one, where is my kid going to go to school? Question number two, what buildings are going to remain open? Which ones are going to be closed? What is going to be the supporting rationale? Question number three, the per pupil allowance. Is it going to be what Ypsilanti gets from Lansing? Is it going to be what Willow Run gets from Lansing? Is it going to be a combination or a middle figure? Question number four, what is the curriculum going to look like? What teachers are going to teach what classes? Where are the classes going to be offered? Question number four, how are we going to harmonize the discipline system? Through the work of Vice President Berman, NC district is on the cutting edge of harassment policies. I don't know what the Willow Run district speaks to in terms of discipline, nor do I know what their tracking system for students that stub their toes is specifically. What are going to be the specific plans that we can share with community members on how to raise academic standards, and more particularly, what are going to be our joint activities in terms of closing the achievement gap, and specifically how are we going to speak for those kids that are at the low end of the SES in closing those gaps. Those are questions, maybe I've mentioned them in a rather inarticulate fashion, but I suggest that those are going to be questions that parents are going to want answers to. And they're going to want answers to those questions that will not just be rhetoric coming from either district, spokesperson from either district, but they're going to want to have answers to those questions in concrete plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Phantom. Further discussion?
I think Mr. Fanta did a very good job of bringing up a lot of questions that we all have concerns over.
I have another point here about this, and therefore the result. It says, only after there has been established a clear and defined and detailed plan, with no indication of who's going to do this, who's going to establish a clear and detailed plan for the development and implementation of the unified education system.
Using that analogy, it's like saying, all in favor of going to war? Don't worry, we'll pick the country later. We'll let you know.
Thank you. Vice President Berman.
Thank you, President Bates.